Look at this. In the 1950s, this was sold as a children's toy. Not a movie prop, not a museum piece, a real product. And inside the box were samples of actual uranium. A kid could open this red case, take out a Geiger counter, measure radiation, look at a radioactive decay, and basically pretend to be a nuclear scientist in his bedroom. So the obvious question is, why was this legal? This is the Gilbert Atomic Energy Lab. It was released in 1950 by the A.C. Gilbert Company, a toy company famous for educational science kits and the Erector set. At first glance, it looked like a dream gift for a very smart kid. A beautiful red case, scientific instruments, a manual, a comic book, experiments. But then you read the contents. 4 uranium-bearing hour samples, a Geiger counter, a cloud chamber, an electroscope, a spintorescope. This wasn't just science then, it was radioactive, and somehow the thing was marketed to children. To understand how this happened, you have to understand the mood of the early 1950s. After World War II, atomic energy was terrifying, but it was also marketed as the future. The atom wasn't only associated with bombs, it was also sold as progress, medicine, power, industry, science, a better tomorrow. There were educational films explaining the peaceful use of atomic energy. There were comic books teaching children about atoms. There were science kits designed to turn boys into engineers, chemists, and inventors. The message was simple: don't be afraid of the atom. Understand it, control it, build the future with it. And that is exactly where this story fits in. The Gilbert Atomic Energy Lab wasn't created to scare children. It was created to make nuclear science feel normal. Inside the box, the child resolved what looked like a miniature nuclear laboratory. There were 4 small jars containing uranium-bearing ores, minerals like autunite, torbanite, uraninite, and carnotite. There was a Geiger counter, so the child could detect radiation. There was a cloud chamber used to make the path of particles visible. There was an electroscope to measure radiation. And there was a manual explaining how to run experiments. This is the part that makes the story so strange. The kid didn't hide what it was. He didn't pretend to the radioactive materials was fake. The whole selling point was that this was real science, real instruments, real experiments, real radioactive material for a child. The kit also came with a comic book called Learn How Geiger Splits the Atom, and the details is most unbelievable. A popular comic strip character was used to explain atomic structure, chain reactions, and nuclear energy to children. The comic was made with help from serious names connected to nuclear science, including General Leslie Groves, who directed the Manhattan Project. So, imagine the contrast. A child opens a toy box inside. Uranium ore, radiation instruments, a government-style uranium prospecting guide, and a colorful comic explaining atomic energy. It sounds insane now. But at the time, it was part of much bigger culture push. Make the atom understandable. Make it exciting, make it safe in the public imagination. So, why was this legal? The simple answer is because the world of 1950 did not regulate children's products the way we do today. The US Consumer Product Safety Commission didn't even exist yet. The major federal toy safety laws come later. And in 1950, a product could be dangerous by today's standards, but still be sold as educational and even patriotic. The stranger thing is not that company was hiding the risk. The stranger thing is that the radioactive material was part of the marketing. That was the future. Now, here is where we need to be careful. Was this toy dangerous? Yes, in the obvious sense that giving children radioactive minerals is not exactly a great idea. But was it instantly deadly? Probably not. Modern reviews suggest that if the sample stayed sealed in their containers, the radiation risk was likely much lower than the internet usually makes it sound. The real danger was misuse. The instructions warned users not to remove the ore samples from their jars, because the minerals would flake and crumble. If radioactive dust spread around the room, that would be a much bigger problem. And that is uncomfortable part. This wasn't a sealed museum exhibit, it was a children's toy. It depended on a child following lab safety instructions perfectly. And any parent knows that's a very optimistic business model. The Gilbert Atomic Energy Lab didn't become a huge hit. It was expensive, about $49.5 at the time, which was a lot of money for toy in 1950. Fewer than 5,000 units were sold, and the product was only offered for a short time. By 1952, Gilbert has already replaced it in its catalog with a less ambitious atomic damped chemistry set. So the toy didn't disappear because of a viral scandal. There was no modern style recalled campaign, no social media outrage, no YouTube documentaries warning parents. It mostly failed because it was too expensive, too complicated, and probably too advanced for the average child. The world's most dangerous toy may have failed not because parents were terrified, but because not enough parents wanted to pay for a miniature nuclear laboratory. Today, a toy like this would be almost impossible to imagine on a store shelf. Not just because people understand radiation better, but because consumer safety rules changed. The US Consumer Product Safety Commission was created in 1972 to protect the public from unreasonable risks of injury and death associated with consumer products. Before that, laws come step by step. In 1960, the Federal Hazardous Substances Act introduced stronger rules around hazardous household products. In 1966 and 1969, child protection and toy safety laws expanded the government's ability to restrict dangerous toys. But all of that came after the Gilbert Atomic Energy Lab had already vanished. That's why the phrase, "why was this legal?" is so powerful. Because the answer is not just people were stupid back then. The answer is the law had not caught up yet. The culture was different, and atomic energy was being sold as the future. The Gilbert Atomic Energy Lab is not just a weird toy. It is a time capsule. It shows a moment when society looked at nuclear science with fear, fascination, and almost childlike optimism. A moment when radioactive material could be placed inside a children's science kit because the future felt more exciting than dangerous. And maybe that is why this object is still so disturbing today. Not because it turned children into glowing monsters, but because it reminds us how normal dangerous ideas can look when everyone believes they are progress. So, what is the most dangerous toy ever sold? Maybe. But the more interesting question is, what we are selling today, that people 70 years from now will look at and ask, why was this legal? If you want more stories about dangerous products, banned toys, and strange inventions that somehow made it into people's homes, subscribe, because this one is just at the beginning.